is tell us your name and a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Tariq Shabazz for anybody who's never met me. Now, when you ask me about myself in relation to the campaign, obviously, right? So, or just me, just who am I?
Whatever you want to tell us. We don't
okay,
put
that's fine. All right. So, for anybody who doesn't know me, I embody exactly the spirit of what's going on in Cleveland. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. I know what so many people are going through in this district. I have that shared living experience. I've developed, education over time as well, or I acquired education over time, as well as my military professional background. But before all those other things, like I said, I was just a kid that grew up in Cleveland. So I know the gun violence that people are facing. I've seen it myself many times. I can't tell you how many times I heard gunshots as a child growing up, to the point where we stopped flinching when you heard shots if it wasn't close enough to you. I said this once, I'll say it again. I had a neighbor that was murdered in my backyard when I was just a young child. And I remember how I felt recognizing, seeing something like that, when just to know that happened right in my own backyard. And the facts of the case was his friend set him up. It really created a lot of trust issues for me as a kid coming up. I've had to run from firefights, just running because people are shooting at someone else, shooting at each other. I know what it sounds like when rounds get past you. So all those things really inspired me to want to go into a life of public service. But some of those things were really daunting for me. I used to feel very voiceless. I didn't feel like I had a chance to really impact any change within my community, because I was a kid growing up. I've seen police brutality. I've seen all these things countless times. But in terms of my aspirations, I want to be a public servant. I always said that one day I want to be president. And I said, well, I wanted to know what it felt like to be in a position of sacrifice. So I joined the military, United States Navy, in 2014. I graduated top of my class. I was a peer tutor, and I've been recognized for that. I got multiple letters of recognition, multiple letters of commendations, flag letters of commendations in my time of service, as well as multiple awards for the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal. Sorry, I have multiple NAMs, is what you would call it. As well as I've won multiple awards as being the Sailor of the Year at my command when I was stationed in Pax River, that's in Maryland. And I've also attained awards for being Sailor of the Quarters multiple times and other commands as well. I've been out to sea. I know what that feels like. And that really did something for me. It showed me how much I can miss my family, my friends, my loved ones. I'm a married man. I got married at a young age. I'm 27 right now. So, so I know what that feels like to really be separated from your family. And that does something to you on a mental level where it's very difficult. And one of the things when I got to a point where I saw all the issues that was still going on in Cleveland, it was still going on in this area that I knew I loved so much as a kid. And I was like, I feel like I got a chance to do something now. I had already completed my bachelor's. I was on my way to finishing my master's. So I felt like I wanted to come back home and really fight for the people. So that's what I did. Immediately I came home and got back on track with doing some of the community engagement events and ran for office. I hope that answers it a little bit more for some people who doesn't know me, but it's a lot deeper things than that, but we only have a small amount of time. So.
Alrighty, what quantifiable work have you done inside the 11th Congressional District in the past 6 years as it relates to legislative policy?
Okay, so now that's a very good question, because I hear that oftentimes throughout this district about whether or not individuals have the capability to write legislation. So number one, some of the things that I feel aren't talked about enough is the level of actual, the amount of pages that are actually within these bills on the lowest levels of the municipality, the county, state, upward onto the federal government. I learned how to write and draft legislation when I was in high school. I used to compete all throughout the state. I've been awarded, I've been placed, I placed a couple times, and that was where I learned the very basic building blocks of how to actually draft legislation, and not just saying what's a resolution versus a bill, or what's a concurrent resolution, not things like that, but just learning exactly how you actually would draft the resolution, where do you put whereas this in the bill, where do you state this, the title goes here, short title, the action here, where's the next part. So I learned all those things early on. And as I increased in my understanding of those things, I finished my master's in public policy, and my concentration was in national security. So to answer your question specifically, 5 years, for 5 years, I was gone. I was in the US Navy, so most of the time, but I was still active within the political process. I still did reach out to candidates and things in that nature. But to answer your question, what legislation have I actually drafted and created in the recent years? I have not drafted any that has been actually implemented on any level of government. So to answer your question in that, I hope that gave you a little bit more of an understanding.
Okay. What committees would you like to be on in Washington, and how would they help the 11th Congressional District?
Okay. That is such a very good question, because number one, if people don't understand that committees committees are actually how you really get some of those changes into some of these bills, because we don't have necessarily the open rule right now where anybody can just say, I want to put an amendment up and within the House in that nature. So some of the committees I want to be in a committee for Intel, because I feel that I've already proven that I can be charged with certain information. I have proven that over time already. I think that I'll be an excellent addition to the Intel committee, as well as the Armed Services Committee. I believe wholeheartedly I support our troops, support our military, but we have to do some real soul searching about how much of our operational budget is being bludgeoned. We're really wasting a lot of our appropriations of our tax dollars. So Armed Services Committee as well. And I would love to, at some form of capacity, get into the Judiciary Committee in some form of fashion. Because I am a huge advocate for reparations, and I know that bill will go to multiple committees, not just the Judiciary. It's gonna go through lots of things, but specifically the Intel Committee, the House, the House Armed Services Committee. Those are the two definitely big committees I would love to be in to actually enact some form of change.
Alrighty, what is your current relationship with the Biden-Harris administration?
To what extent, when you ask that question?
Just in general, what's your relationship with the Biden-Harris administration?
Well, some people would consider someone like me, from a historical standpoint, would be a carpetbagger, I guess, because I don't have necessarily the same level of political connections as some other candidates that's within this race. However, I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that should be that should attenuate my abilities to actually to create those bridges with the Biden-Harris administration. So as an answer, I would say I do not have an actual direct connection with the Biden-Harris administration, but the willingness to still work with the president and the vice president is completely there, because I have to work for the District 11, and working for District 11, I have to be able to work alongside so many varying ideologies and views within Congress, as well as working with the President of the United States of America.
What are some of the examples of how you have worked across party lines to help with racial equity inside of the 11th Congressional District in the past 6 years?
Okay, within the past 6 years. Okay, so outside of the Congressional District of 11, things that we did do within the military is this. I was a huge proponent in leading diversity events, whereas we reached out with people who had so many varying viewpoints of exactly what people think. I mean, the things that people have actually you can imagine how different people's views are within the military. You get thrown into it very quickly. So I have worked and led into those capacities to actually bring people together to understand our differences. But in this district, you asked me specifically, how have I worked to build the bridge between across? Is that what you were saying?
It says, what are some of the examples of how you have worked cross party lines to help with racial equity inside the 11th Congressional District in the past 6 years?
again, these are one of those questions that I would be barred from specifically because of the amount of time that I was gone. However, but I have reached out and spoken to many individuals who are Republican, conservative, to actually build that bridge and talk to people exactly about the issues at hand. Because I'm running for the people's house. That's what this is about. It's about reaching to people. So I talk to people. I listen to people. I understand the differences they have. And one of the things I notice very often throughout this spectrum of whether or not we're Democrats or Republicans is that oftentimes we tend to agree on things. We just don't know where we agree at. And that's where I've been working on building that bridge. And even as a candidate, those are the things I still do now. I reach out to people who are conservative as well.
Okay. What is your plan for improvements to our current criminal justice system inside the 11th Congressional District?
Well, number one, I will say this right now. At the top of the ticket of this district, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that we have far too many individuals who are not actually trained to be officers right now. We have people who are not in compliance is the best terminology I should utilize. They're not in compliance in some form or fashion. So we need to address that. Also, when people talk about what do they feel about in relation to defund the police, I wholeheartedly believe that we need to start acknowledging other approaches to create a prevention of crime within our areas. So I talk about investing into these communities, the community economic development specifically, so the people who live in those areas can actually build, treating the trauma that many people are facing. Because I know for a fact, the trauma that people are facing right now, people need some counseling. People need some actual help, some real assistance. Otherwise, there is no way, no pathway for us to actually progress. So that's number two. Again, we need to hold police officers accountable that are actually committing egregious acts into these communities. We cannot just allow these individuals to just get off after they perform something that is so capricious to these people who live there. Like I said, I've seen these things all my life. So we're going to fight to push for those things from the top of the ticket. So I did see that the George Floyd police justice, let me not go over. All right, HR 1280, I believe. So specifically, that bill being passed, I think there's other things that still needs to be added into it. We need to completely eradicate privatized prison systems throughout this country. It is morally unjust. It does not save us money and nowhere near in the long run. If you check anyone who's watching, if you check the reports, Core Civic and GEO rakes in billions of dollars annually to put people in prisons that look like me and you. And I think that's absolutely reprehensible. It needs to be, people need to be held accountable for that. So in short, a big way to actually stop some of that is we need to actually get some real constitutional amendment changes going on. 13th Amendment needs to be relooked at. People's rights are being violated. We are valuing people's bodies as a monetary viewpoint, as opposed to human beings. And that's not okay. America is 5% of the total population of the world, yet we have 25% of the world's imprisoned population. How can we be the country, the home of the brave, the land of the free, when you have the most people incarcerated in the entire world? That's absolutely unacceptable. So as the top of this ticket, I will always fight to push and advocate for criminal justice reform. And some people may not like that when I say terms like, we do need radical change. We don't need incremental change, because incremental change is where we're at right now. The conditions that so many people are being subjected to are radical to these people. They're being treated like they're subhuman, and that's not okay.
All right. What are your plans for bridging the educational and digital divides inside the 11th Congressional District?
That's a very good question, because in terms of digital literacy, that is a very big one too. So not only do we need to actually establish connectivity, we need to really improve the digital literacy aspect as well, because the average individual does not actually know how to find information if they need to. We live in the information age, right? So there's so many things that are out there that people don't know how to sift through whether or not this is actual accurate or this is something that's going to be misinformation or disinformation, which is what we saw in 2016, the disinformation campaigns that we saw with the state of Russia inflicting on this country. So the digital connectivity aspect must come with a couple of things. I talk huge about cybersecurity and pushing for more people to have access, utility access to the internet as a whole. Now, these are something that's going to be more specific down to the municipal level. As the federal legislator, my job is going to be to write the legislation, put it into a bill where we're going to appropriate the most amount of resources to assist with the state as well as the county and the municipal component. Now, when we actually provide these public utilities for these individuals, again, we need to bolster our cybersecurity and our infrastructure throughout. If we're going to have some system where everyone can log into an internet system or some form of fashion, we need to make sure that everyone understands how they can be exploited online. Because right now, the most cyber attacks that typically happen in America are for the financial component of it, and it's mainly done for the financial component. So it's cyber theft as opposed to actually espionage, cyber espionage. So those are the things that we really need to touch base on. So hopefully I answered your question a little bit, but if not, I'd always be willing to further elaborate. Exactly.
All righty. The next question is what do you see as the biggest impediment to the wealth disparities inside the 11th Congressional District?
Gatekeepers, 100%. I mean, we have to acknowledge that in the United States of America, we have the highest gross domestic product of any nation in the entire world. So it's not a matter of do we have the resources, it's more so a matter of prioritization. So when people ask me, do I think I could do better? 100%. That's the reason why I'm running. I picked up the clipboard because of that. That's what Barack Obama said. He said, if you have a problem with the way things are being done, pick up the clipboard. So I picked it up. So to acknowledge that, some of the things that are really straining us, I'll talk about it as systemic racism. I'm not afraid to call that out because it's the reality. We're talking about redlining. We need to be holding banks accountable too. And that's also retroactively. Banks that have been known to treat people wrongly needs to be held accountable. And some of those funds that we take from a federal level needs to be redistributed to the people, to the communities that have been marginalized the most. So we need to really be talking about establishing equity. I hear a lot of the talk about equality. Equality is not necessarily the same as what is equitable. So that's something that we really need to be pushing harder for, making sure that every individual that has the same opportunity to thrive. So that's increasing the education to promote people learning how credit works, financial literacy. So we can actually have more people that build business plans up, and then actually they are the next people to actually establish businesses within their community.
All right, cool. Last question. You have 2 minutes. What are the priorities of the Biden-Harris administration for the 11th Congressional District?
What are the priorities specifically? Well, it's numerous things that I would say was some of the priorities. Number one, we need to acknowledge the fact that we need to get more people vaccinated. That's one thing specifically. We have to really talk about the pandemic and of how it's affecting so many of the people within this district. So one of the things that we saw very recently was rolling out in terms of the Wolfstein Center. We said that they reached out to all the governors throughout the states of America, to actually to tell exactly to the Biden administration what they need and what's necessary to actually really improve the standings of where we are in combating the coronavirus. So specifically, the enacting some serious change right now in relation to the pandemic, and establishing equity is another very big block. And those are one of those things I talked about. And I said, I wanted to go a step further. The Biden administration is now not slightly saying that they're thinking about reparations. I believe if we want to truly talk about establishing equity, what does reparations look like? We need to look at the protections that comes with it. We need to look at that, whether or not, how much are the cash payments? Is it going to be somewhere between $9 to $12 trillion? How will this be dispersed? Things and all those things in that nature. So I'm going to work with the Biden administration. Don't get me wrong. But in this district, we need somebody that's actually coming with other ideas because fundamentally, we represent the district. So we know more about what's happening in this district than the others would know. I hope that answers your question.
All right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Brother Shabazz, we so appreciate you participating in this process. We do not take it for granted. Um, we just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for your participation. We wish you well, and we'll be in touch very shortly. Team that's
Uh-huh.
on, go
I'm
ahead.
listening.
Thank you. If you want to say, if you want to say something, go right ahead because they're still
Okay.
on.
I did want to say thank you to everybody who's in attendance. Thank you to the Unified Endorsement process itself for actually even inviting me out to come speak about some of these issues that I feel are so crucial to the actual people of District 11. I will always be the person who fight for the little person. I am a person who's not the biggest guy, but I'm always fight for the little person. So I hope I was able to actually inform some of the people about some of my ideas. And if there was areas where I didn't elaborate enough, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at Shabazz for Congress. Contact us. Let's talk. That's the only way we can actually build.
All right. Thank you, Big Bro. So we so appreciate you.